Ladies and gentlemen, we'll start it with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we live, work, and gather on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin people, specifically the Temiskaming First Nation. We recognize the presence of the Temiskaming First Nation in our community since time immemorial and honor their long history of welcoming many nations to this beautiful territory and uplift their voice and values. So with that, we'll call the meeting to order. I'll ask the clerk for the roll call, please.
Good evening, Your Worship. All members are present.
Thank you very much. Item number 3 is review of revisions or deletions to the agenda. Has anybody got anything they want to add or delete to the agenda at this point? If not, we've got a motion. Be resolved that City Council approves the agenda as printed. Moved by Councillor Jelly, second by Councillor Foley. All in favor? That is carried. Do we have? There we go. Okay. During disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature tonight. So, seeing and hearing none, we'll go on to item number 6, review and adoption of the council minutes. And I've got a motion be resolved that City Council approves the following minutes as printed. A, the regular meeting of council that was held on October the 5th, 2021. We're a mover from motion, Councillor MacArthur. Second by Councillor Whalen. All in favor? That is carried. There's no public meetings pursuant to the Planning Act, Municipal Act, or other statute tonight. We reached the first question and answer period. Do we have a question, Shelley?
We have one. So Mr. Dan Dawson submitted an email commenting on the state of Drive-In Theatre Road with the construction that's been occurring. So for example, potholes and pavement breakup. Mr. Dawson inquired if the city can make road maintenance near the entrance of the site a condition of the construction company, and provided an example of the work current construction completed at the residential construction site on Roland Street.
Thank you for that question. I looked into this a bit today. When Hearns were doing this construction there, they actually hired Pedersen Construction to install the water and sewer into that first sixplex there, and they cut across Roland and connected the connections under Roland. So they dug up the road in that part of Roland Street. So that's why they went back in and repaved that section. So that's why it looks so good there. They did the same thing when they were working on the lodge. They cut across Grant Drive and installed the water line underneath Grant Drive when they were putting the water over to the Temiskaming Lodge. So, and they were back in and repaved that section of Grant Drive. So that's sort of what's happening as far as the development there and what Pedersen is doing in order to hook up the water lines. Now, as far as the pavement breaking up, we were hoping that we were going to end up paving that road this fall, and we were hoping that their construction was going to be far enough along that all their heavy equipment and heavy supplies would have been in and out to that site before now, but with their late construction, we're going to be too late to try and pave it this fall. So I think I've sort of mentioned to Public Works there that we'll have to try and keep gravel on there and keep us leveled off somewhat with a loader or grader or whatever, just to try and eliminate the potholes there. But it's until they finish their construction, there's no sense going back in there and paving that road, because they'll just break it all back up again. So Chris, do you have any other comments on that? So no, it's on our capital list to pave next year. So as soon as that heavy construction gets finished, we'll get back on our capital roads program for 2022. We'll see that road get paved down as far as the housing anyway, and then we'll probably surface street the rest of the road down to Peters Road. But so that sort of explains what we're at on that particular issue. So is there any other question at this point? Okay. Moving on, there's no presentation tonight. Item number 10 is communications. 10A is a letter from Marie-Josée Tremblay, the Northern Ontario Francophone Immigration Support Network. And it's a proclamation for National Francophone Week, Immigration Week, and the motion to be presented under new business there. 10B is a letter from Ghislaine Lambert, ACTFO Temiskaming, regarding change of representation on the Age-Friendly Committee, and that was received on October the 4th, and there's a bylaw presented for consideration under Section 16 of the bylaws tonight. 10C is a letter from Peter Henry, the Director, Crown Forest and Lands Policy Branch for the Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources and Forestry. and it's regarding a proposed amendments to the Crown Forest Sustainability Act 1994, Professional Foresters Act 2000, and the Public Lands Act. The Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources, and Forestry include the Supporting People and Business Act 2021. That was received on October the 7th for information. 10D is a letter from David Zure, the manager for timber allocation and licensing section of the operations branch of the Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources, and Forestry, regarding the proposed issuance of a sustainable forest license for the Temiskaming Management Unit. This is going to be issued to the Temiskaming Forest Management Corporation. That was received on October the 8th, and that's going to be referred to myself to respond back to the Northern Natural Resources Minister there, and I provide a little bit of a background there in a draft letter. If anybody has any comments or any additions they want to make or changes, please let me know on that. 10E is 123-53547 Canada Incorporated, the Hillbury Beach Motel. It's a request to purchase the land at 314 Broadway Street in Hillbury. It's received on October the 13th. And that's been referred to the municipal clerk to process in accordance with the city's disposition of land bylaw 2015-160. And lastly, 10F is a letter from Melanie Ducharme, Executive Director for Pavilions Women's Center, a request for proclamation and flag raising on November the 25th, 2021, and that was received October the 14th, and there's a motion to be presented on the new business for that. So I got a motion to be resolved that City Council agrees to deal with communication items 10A through 10F according to the agenda references. So move by Councillor Ferrier, second by Councillor Foley. Any comments, questions, or any issues you want to bring back at all? If not, I'll call a question. All in favor? And that is carried. Item number 11 is the Committees of Council, Community and Regional. A motion be resolved the following minutes be accepted for information. A, the minutes of the Temiskaming Shores Ad Hoc Climate Change Committee held on September the 2nd, 2021. B is the minutes of the Temiskaming Shores Public Library Board meeting held on June the 23rd, 2021. C is the minutes of the Temiskaming Shores Police Services Board meeting held on September the 20th, 2021. D is the minutes of the Recreation Committee meeting held on September the 13th, 2021. And E, the minutes of the Temiskaming Transit Committee meeting held on September the 27th, 2021. So, moved by Councillor Whalen, second by Councillor Jelly. Any comments on those 5 sets of minutes? Not all in favor? That would be carried. Item 12 is the Committees of Council, Internal Departments. And I have a motion to be resolved that the following minutes be accepted for information. A, the minutes of the Building Maintenance Committee meeting held on September the 15th, 2021. B, the minutes of the Corporate Services Committee meeting held on September the 15th, 2021. C is the minutes of the Protection of the Person and Property Committee meeting held on September the 15th, 2021. And finally, the item D, the minutes of the Public Works Committee meeting held on September the 15th, 2021. Mover and seconder, Councillor Ferrier, second Councillor Foley. Any comments, discussion? All in favor? That would be carried. Are there any reports by members of council tonight? So, Councillor Whalen.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Finally, the TMA executive was able to meet up in Earlton Thursday past. It's been quite some time since we had an in-person meeting, so there was lots on the agenda. It was nice to see everybody and a worthwhile discussion. And we'll be holding the AGM on 28th of October again in the upstairs hall, and we'll have social distancing and someone checking the status at the door, so looking forward to that.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments, reports, members of council? If not, we'll keep rolling along. Any notice of motions tonight? So, hearing seen none, we'll move into new business. 15A is the looking for support for Phenom letter to the Honourable Peter Bethlen Fabley All the Danny respond to all those ones. So, Minister of Finance regarding support for Ontario municipalities to grant the same revenue tools as the City of Toronto. And motion reads, whereas the Association of Municipalities of Ontario estimates the annual province-wide municipal infrastructure deficit to be $6 billion, and whereas the City of Toronto Act 2006 granted Toronto broader municipal revenue tools than the other 443 municipalities, and whereas the AMO has long lobbied for its members to have the right to access the same revenue tools permitted by the City of Toronto Act, and whereas one of the revenue tools the City of Toronto charges and collects as a municipal land transfer tax, there is a municipal land transfer tax in parallel with the province of Ontario for all property sales except for first-time home buyers. And whereas in 2020, the City of Toronto received $800 million from the municipal land transfer tax. This offset represents 15% of their annual revenue. It's paid 28% of their 2021 budget. And this revenue tool would generate nearly $2.68 billion for the other Ontario municipalities, which would help municipalities' growing infrastructure deficit. And whereas the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities believes MLTT be renamed Land Transfer Infrastructure Support, now therefore be resolved that the Council for the Sea Temiskaming Shores supports the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities request to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario to lobby the Premier of Ontario to grant Ontario municipalities the same municipal revenue tools as the City of Toronto. And further to be resolved that an electronic copy of this resolution be shared with the Provincial Minister of Finance, Peter Bethenflaby, the leaders of the provincial oppositions, the Ontario's big city mayors, Roma, OSUM, and NOMA. Mover and second that motion, Councillor Ferrier. Second by Councillor Jelly. Any comments? Councillor Whalen?
Yeah, not to take up too much time, but just we do mention the property land transfer tax. That's only one tool, though. As this council has witnessed over the years, we've been very generous in building things that benefit the region, not just the City of Temiskaming Shores. And as our assessment grows, so does our various bills that come in. So we don't, other than the property tax, we don't have any tools available to offset any of these costs. There's just under 3 million people in the City of Toronto, and they were able to negotiate the Toronto Act, which give them a whole long list of powers. Well, the other 11 million people live outside of the City of Toronto, and we think it's time that we had serious discussions about opportunities for the rest of us. Minister Bethenflaby is very open-minded, so that's why we kind of left the motion open-ended, so we could have a good long discussion on it. So,
good, thank you. Any other comments? All in favor of that motion? That would be carried. 15B is support for the consolidation of agencies to address the opioid, mental health, and addictions crisis. It's from Phenom as well. And the motion reads, whereas communities across the province are addressing an intensified social crisis, and Northern Ontario is no different. And whereas creating solutions will require a multi-ministerial approach, and whereas we have learned from this pandemic that where there were once cracks in the healthcare foundation, there are now large gaps forming, especially around mental health, addictions, and homelessness. And whereas Northern Ontario has significant challenges when it comes to assessing mental health and addiction services, or accessing mental health and addiction services for our people in our communities. And whereas over 300 child care staff who provide services to over 21,000 licensed child care spaces in over 340 locations across the north, and they see the effects of mental health and addictions every day in the children they care for and the parents they support. And whereas the defined area of Northern Ontario is over 800,000 square kilometers, where over 500 social services staff provide financial and employment assistance to over 15,000 families in 37 delivery sites across the north, and over 300 community housing staff support safe and affordable housing to over 17,000 families in the north, and over 1,200 police officers and over 900 paramedics responded to 200,000 medical emergency 911 calls. And whereas paramedics have seen the direct results of the mental health and addictions crisis in the north, and some cases becoming ill themselves trying to cope with what they may have seen. And whereas Phenom appreciates the efforts of all the agencies that are working to help and support those addicted to opioids, and whereas in some districts, over 30 agencies are providing the same assistance, and Phenom would like to see consolidation of these agencies for the input of municipalities, DSABs, and local stakeholders so the delivery of services could be streamlined through the one agency that would be able to put the combined funds to better use. Now, therefore, be resolved, the Council for the City of Temiskaming Stores hereby supports Phenom's request that our Northern Ontario health teams, in consultation with the municipalities and DSABs and local stakeholders, support a province-wide strategy that supports such a consolidation. And further be resolved that the copy of this resolution be shared with the Premier, Doug Ford, Christine Elliott, the Minister of Health, Michael Tibilow, the Associate Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, the Leader of Provincial Oppositions, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AIMO. So, we're moving and second that motion. Councillor Jelly, Councillor Foley. Any comments? Councillor Whalen?
Yeah, sorry to take up so much time.
We got lots.
As you're aware, Phenom represents all of northeastern Ontario, but I always take great pride in the district of Temiskaming, looking at our own Social Services Administration Board, their partnership with Zach's Crib, the Curtin Lake detachment of the OPP, and Temiskaming Shores detachment of the OPP, and the recent program they've created with Canadian Mental Health Association. That's going to prove invaluable. And what we're saying is we need to see a lot more of this. And when we do develop a new program to deal with homelessness, opioids, or mental health, all the players have to be in the room at the same time, because so many of the agencies are regulated by their funding agreement. So they're almost handcuffed in which clients they can deal with. So we believe a consolidation of some of the funding and agencies will open up the clientele that they can deal with and deal with them a lot quicker. So,
Councillor Jelly?
Yeah, just a little follow-up to that. DSAB just completed their homelessness enumeration of the area. It'll be released tomorrow evening at our DSAB meeting. And believe me, we are in trouble in this area when you talk about small population, the percentages that are homeless. So, thanks for that resolution, Danny, and let's hope they move forward on it. We're trying here in the area with the OPP Mental Health and DSAB to keep our own going, but we certainly need provincial help too. So, thank you.
Now, I know the Temiskaming Health Unit had a whole department there for mental health back 10, 11 years ago. And that all the funding was transferred over to CMHA, and that's where all the services went, and we were closed off from providing any mental health services. So the health unit sort of had to back right off of that, but it is CMHA that is supposed to be the main lead on this, but this email will certainly help in this direction. It will probably help for the whole province, so thank you. So, all in favor of this motion? That is carried. 15C, support Save Eye Care in Ontario from the town of Kingsville. And the motion reads, whereas the Council for the town of Kingsville adopted a resolution regarding Ontario eye care, and whereas routine eye care is critical in early detection of eye diseases like glaucoma, cataracts, and macular degeneration, and the health of eyes is critical to overall health and quality of life, and whereas conditions that may be detected with an annual eye exam include diabetes mellitus and glaucoma, cataract, retinal disease, amblyopia, lazy eye, visual field effects, loss of part of the usual field of vision, corneal disease, strabismus, crossed eyes, recurrent uveitis, and inflammation of the uvea, and middle layer of the eye, and that consists of the iris, ciliary body, and choroid, optic pathway disease. And whereas payments from the OHIP have only increased 9% over the last 30 years, which has not come close to matching inflation of costs, which include rent, staff, utilities, equipment, taxes, and supplies. And whereas the lack of funding makes it difficult to invest in modern technology, and newer technology means earlier detection of eye disease. And whereas the provincial government's refusal to formally negotiate with optometrists for over 30 years has forced the optometrists to absorb nearly $173 million annually in the cost to deliver eye care to Ontarians. And whereas the 2020 Ontario budget did not address OHIP-insured eye care, Ontario optometrists took action and voted to withdraw OHIP services starting September 1st, 2021, unless the government agrees to legally binding negotiations to fund these services, at least to the cost of delivery. And whereas this job action will jeopardize good eye care for those who need the care of an optometrist for the most and the optometrist the most, and will have the greatest impact on the most vulnerable groups. Now therefore be resolved that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores hereby supports the town of Kingsville in their request that the provincial government recognizes the value that access to quality eye care brings to all Ontarians and act now to protect it. And that the provincial government address the OHIP-insured eye care immediately and enter into legally binding negotiations with Ontario optometrists to fund these services, at least to the cost of delivery, prior to any job action being taken place. And further, the copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Premier Doug Ford, Christine Elliott, the Minister of Health, John Vantoff, MPP for Temiskaming Cochrane, and the Association of Municipalities of Optometrists, and the town of Kingsville. So, mover, Councillor Whalen. Second by Councillor Ferrier. Any comments? All in favor of that motion? That is carried. 15D, proclamation of National Francophone Immigration Week. That's November 7th to the November 13th. And whereas National Francophone Immigration Week is celebrated throughout Canada, and the slogan on Francophonie au Mille Silvers. And whereas taking note of appreciation, immigration, refugee, and citizenship in Canada, I strongly believes that attracting, integrating, and retaining French-speaking immigrants outside Quebec contributes to enhancing the vitality of communities by strengthening Canada's linguistic duality and increasing diversity within communities, provinces, and territories. And whereas considering the relationship between French-speaking immigrants and the vitality of the Francophone community and the community of Temiskaming Shores at large, and whereas bearing in mind the positive impact that French-speaking immigrants bring to the City of Temiskaming Shores, now therefore be resolved that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores hereby proclaim the week of November the 7th to the 13th as National Francophone Immigration Week in the City of Temiskaming Shores. So, Councillor Ferrier, second by Councillor Jelly. Councillor MacArthur.
Yes, I'm definitely going to be in favor of this motion. However, I'm a little puzzled with some of the way it's written, and maybe you can straighten me out. These folks are refugees coming to Canada, and they're not in Quebec, they're outside Quebec, and this organization wants to bring these folks who speak only French to Northern Ontario, namely Temiskaming Shores. And I have nothing against that, but would you not think that they would be learning English too? Or, I mean, yes, they're going to meet Francophones throughout Northern Ontario and Temiskaming Shores, but wouldn't they have to consider speaking English, even though Quebec is over here? We're talking outside Quebec. You know what I mean? I don't understand.
I mean, there are two parts, Mike. I mean, there's one part where you're looking at immigration from all nations around the world. So some of them have a mother tongue of French, and a lot of them can speak other languages. So you're encouraging them to come and locate here and set up practice. And if their mother tongue is for French, then they'll eventually pick up English as well. And then we're a bilingual part of the province, and we're mandated to be bilingual. So, I mean, it's not just not refugees; it's citizens from all around the world and immigrants in there. So whether they're coming from France or whether they're coming from Quebec or Nova Scotia, or New Brunswick, whatever, I think we've got to welcome these people in and work with them and make sure they feel welcome here. So, I mean, when the Dutch came here, the Dutch had to learn English, and we're no different from the French coming. So. Any other comments? So. If not, all in favor of that motion? That is carried. 15E is a proclamation of International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, set up for November 25th, 2021. And I got a motion whereas violence continues to be the greatest gender inequality rights issue for women, girls, and gender diverse individuals. And whereas November is the Women's Abuse Prevention Month, and whereas gender-based violence is a human right issue which our community must work together to address and prevent and address those public awareness and education. And whereas 1 in 3 women will experience gender-based violence in their lifetime, and these numbers increase exponentially for Black, Indigenous, and women of color. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has increased barriers to support and services for survivors of gender-based violence and their children. And whereas last year in Ontario, every 13 days a woman or child was killed by a man known to them, with the majority being their current or former intimate partner. And whereas this November and throughout the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, we acknowledge our community's support of the Wrapped in Courage campaign and commitment to ending gender-based violence. And whereas on November the 25th, the International Day of the Elimination of Violence Against Women, a Wrapped in Courage 2021 campaign flag will be raised in recognition that the courage of a woman alone is not enough. It takes an entire community to end gender-based violence. Now therefore be resolved that the Council for the State of Victoria hereby proclaims and declares November the 25th, 2021 as the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women, and urges all citizens to recognize this day by taking action to support survivors of gender-based violence and becoming part of Ontario's wide efforts to end gender-based violence. So, do we have a move? Moved by Councillor Ferrier, second by Councillor Jelly. So, I think James will probably put the flag up on the pole during that day. So, all in favor? That would be carried. 15F was Memo 035-2021 CS, the deeming bylaw for Walsh at 682 Latcher Street. The motion reads, whereas the owners of 682 Latcher Street would like to merge lots on title through the adoption of a deeming bylaw in compliance with the Planning Act in order to create one property with one roll number. And whereas the owners have acknowledged that registration of the pending deeming bylaw on title would be at their expense, and now therefore be resolved that the Council for the State of Victoria hereby directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw to deem Plan M54NB, lots 138, 139, 156, 157, parcel 22563 SST to no longer be lots on a plan of subdivision, and further the Council hereby directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw, deeming bylaw for consideration at the October 19, 2021 regular council meeting. So, mover and seconder for that motion. Councillor Foley, second by Councillor MacArthur. All in favor? That would be carried. 15G is Memo 036-2021 CS, the aerial imagery acquisition, and its participation agreement with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. And I have a motion be resolved the Council of the State of Victoria hereby acknowledge receipt of Memo 036-2021 CS. The Council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw to enter into a participation agreement with the Natural Resources and Forestry for the acquisition of aerial imagery at a cost of $1,041.61 for consideration at the October 19th regular council meeting tonight. So, mover and seconder for that motion, Councillor Ferrier, second by Councillor Foley. Any comments? Just will give us new updated aerial photography there. So, all in favor? That is carried. 15H, Administrative Report CS 042-2021, the site plan agreement for CMEA Holdings Incorporated at 40 Armstrong Street South. Be resolved the Council for the State of Victoria acknowledge receipt of Administrative Report CS 042-2021. The Council agrees to enter into a site plan agreement with CMEA Holdings Incorporated for the property at 40 Armstrong Street South. And the Council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw to enter into a site plan agreement with CMEA Holdings Incorporated for the property at 40 Armstrong Street South for consideration during the bylaw portion of the October 19th regular council meeting here tonight. So we're moving a seconder. So Councillor Foley, second by Councillor Whalen. All in favor? That is carried. 15I, Administrative Report CS 043, 2021, the proposed sale of municipal land as part of Delia Lane. And the motion reads, be it resolved that Council for the City of Twisting Shores acknowledge receipt of Administrative Report CS 043, 2021. The Council directs staff to discontinue the disposition process outlined in the City's Disposition of Land Bylaw 2015-160 due to the safety concerns related to restricting access to Hydro 1 in the event of fire, the location of utility and infrastructure, and the requirements of various easement agreements. So, moved by Councillor Whalen, second by Councillor Ferrier. Any comments? Just come up with Councillor Foley.
Yeah, thank you. Did we come up with any type of agreement for that lady and her parking, or I wasn't sure.
No, I think Mrs. Neamy's going to have to, she bought the property with the building that's pretty well encompasses that whole lot, so she's going to come up with some kind of parking for her tenant herself there. I mean, it's not up to the city to provide parking for that particular lot, and we're just not allowing her to use that laneway as a parking lot there, or parking laneway for herself there. So Chris?
Councillor Foley, you might be thinking about so Logan, or the clerk Logan and I did discuss it a little bit, that because the say leasing the lane, but Hydro 1's fairly clear, so if we lease it, we can't necessarily guarantee that Hydro would have the access they would need on an emergency basis, and if they couldn't locate the tenant of that property to move their vehicle, it could impact the ability for Hydro to get in on an emergency basis. So in the comments that Logan received back from Hydro, it appears that Hydro would rather there not be either a lease or a any form of disposition, either selling the land or leasing the land, because either one of them would restrict their access in some way. And I know everyone feels that there would be, good intention that someone could move their vehicle quickly, but that doesn't always happen. So it really is up to council, but I think Hydro, based on the comments from Hydro, that's why we brought this recommendation back.
Yes, after the last meeting or this past week, I actually did go over and have a look at that lot, and it is very, very small. So, I mean, I agree that back lane does look like it's used a fair bit, and there are utilities there, so it's unfortunate, but it is a small lot.
No, I think either the tenant or the owner is going to have to negotiate some kind of agreement with the neighbor there somewhere to let her park somewhere, so that's up to them, I think. So any other discussion on this particular motion? Councillor Whalen?
Yeah, just quickly, we have a few reasons laid out here, but the other thing is, I'm normally a big fan of selling off properties we don't use, but if you go around the city and really look, there's some of these laneways that are overgrown and never used, and there's other ones that are used constantly. So we have to remember that we also have our four-wheelers and our snowmobilers, so using the back lanes actually keeps them off the residential street. So in cases like this, I think it's important that we recognize the rest of the residents.
Okay. I'll call the question. All in favor of this motion? That would be carried. 15J, Administrative Report PPP 004 2021, the appointment of volunteer firefighters. And I got a motion to be resolved the Council for the City of Twisting Shores acknowledge receipt of Administrative Report PPP 004 2021. The Council hereby appoints Eric Benjamin, Jesse Jones, and Mitchell Faulkner as volunteer firefighters to the Twisting Shores Fire Department in accordance with the recruitment and retention program. I don't believe any of these gentlemen are present tonight, Steve, there, so just I want to welcome them on our behalf there too. And so move for a second to that motion, Councillor Ferrier, second by Councillor Jelly. All in favor? That is carried. Gives you 3 more firefighters to look after, Steve. So, 15K, Memo 037, 2021 CS, the deeming bylaw for Goche at 213 Whitewood Avenue. And whereas the owners of 213 Whitewood Avenue would like to merge lots on title through the adoption of a deeming bylaw in compliance with the Planning Act in order to create one property with one roll number. And whereas the owners have acknowledged that registration of the pending deeming bylaw on title will be at their expense. Now therefore be resolved, the council for the city of St. George hereby direct staff to prepare the necessary bylaw to deem plans M41NB, lots 28 and 29, and part of lot 30, PT Lane, and RP TRER 517, parts 5, 4, and 5, parcel 14191 SST, and Plan M41NB, Lot 27, Parcel 5883 SST to no longer be lots on a plan of subdivision, and further the council hereby directs staff to prepare the necessary deeming bylaw for consideration at the October 19th, 2021 regular council meeting. So, moved by Councillor Jelly, second by Councillor Foley. All in favor? That is carried. Moving into the bylaws. Be resolved that bylaw 2021-155, being a bylaw of the Corporation of the City of St. George to authorize a borrowing upon serial debentures in the principal amount of $229,900.27 toward the cost of the 2021 fleet replacement. Bylaw 2021-156, being a bylaw to amend the City of St. George procedural bylaw 2008-160, the electronic meeting participation. Bylaw 2021-157, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2019-18, the appointment of community representatives to various committees and boards for the 2019-2022 term of council for the age-friendly committee. Bylaw 2021-158, being a bylaw to designate any plan of subdivision or part thereof that has been registered for 8 years or more, which shall be deemed as not a registered plan of subdivision for 682 Latchford Street. Roll numbers 5418, 030, 001, and 116.00. Bylaw 2021-159, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a site plan control agreement with CMEA Holdings Incorporated for 40 Armstrong Street South. Roll number 5418, 020, 001, 018.20, and 018.21. Bylaw 2021-160, being a bylaw to enter into an agreement with Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Ontario for representation, or as represented by the Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources and Forestry for the acquisition of aerial imagery for the City of St. George. And lastly, bylaw 2021-162, being a bylaw to designate any plan of subdivision or part thereof that has been registered for 8 years or more, which shall be deemed as not a registered plan of subdivision for 213 Whitewood Avenue. Roll 5418, 010, 003, 274.00, and 5418, 010, 003, 275.01. These bylaws be hereby introduced and given first and second reading. So, moved by Councillor Whalen, second by Councillor MacArthur. All in favor? That is carried. And motion be resolved that bylaws 2021-155, 156, 157, 158, 159, 160, and 162 be given third and final reading, be signed by the mayor and clerk, and the corporate seal affixed thereto. We're moving a second for that motion. Moved by Councillor Foley, second by Councillor Jelly. Any comments on these bylaws before we pass third and final reading? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Item number 17, the scheduled council meetings. The next one set up for Tuesday, November the 2nd, 2021. And subsequent to that, we have a regular meeting set up for Tuesday, November the 16th at 6 p.m. So we have our second question and answer period. Do we have any questions by the public? Any members of council got any questions tonight at all? And Steve just wanted me to mention that Joyelle Drive will be pulverized this weekend and be paved. I would think either on the weekend or is it Thursday or Friday there? Yeah. So that work will be done, and we'll get the transit route rerouted on the Joyelle Drive there. So. Motion going to closed session. Be resolved the council agrees to convene in closed session at 6:52 on the nose to discuss the following matters. A, the adoption of the October 5th, 2021 closed session minutes, and under Section 239(2)C of the Municipal Act 2001, proposed pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality regarding 545 Lakeshore Road. So, mover, Councillor Whalen, second by Councillor Foley. All in favor? We are adjourned for the next 10 or 15 minutes. So.